Hello, everyone. My name is Phil Bernstein. I'm an associate dean and professor adjunct at the Yale School of Architecture. And here in 2021 marks my 19th year working on the global BIM effort. So I'd like to welcome you all to today's Global BIM Summit. I'm going to be your host today, which has been made for this event, which has been made free and open to everyone by the UK's Construction Innovation Hub and by the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. We're going to hold today's event in both English and Spanish. If you look at the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll see an interpretation button there, and that can allow you to choose the option that you wish for interpretation. So building information modeling, which is known by the acronym BIM, is really a central theme of the digitization of our global construction sector. And in that sense, governments around the world are working to transform the way infrastructure is designed and built and operated and really integrated using a tool like BIM. And that platform is available to us to improve our social, economic, and environmental outcomes for the people that use infrastructure and the places that it creates. And so today's actually a pretty auspicious day for the global built environment and those of us who work in it. Because the construction industry is really an international sector. And what we're going to try to do today during today's event is come together to try to foster a more productive and collaborative digital construction market. And this is really for the public good and an effort to establish a global BIM network that is sponsored by and supports the public sector. So this is really the first event of its kind that we've ever tried. It's going to bring together the global building sector, the public sector, multilateral organizations, infrastructure investors, and we're going to launch today our shared vision for a more efficient, productive, and better performing construction sector. So to kick things off, I'm delighted to introduce our keynote speaker, the Right Honourable Anne-Marie Trevelyan, the UK Construction Minister, to get us started today. Madam Minister.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you and your families are keeping well. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to open today's Global BIM Summit, the first global event of its kind, and to celebrate with you the launch of the Global BIM Network. This event provides an excellent forum for discussion of the national and regional BIM initiatives that are accelerating the digital transformation of the construction sector. And of course, today's launch builds on an existing foundation of successful collaborations between governments and regional public sector communities around the world, which are driving better public sector decision-making through building information modelling. I am encouraged by the shared vision which has brought you here to foster a more efficient, more productive, and better performing global construction sector through increased digitisation. This is a propitious moment to speed up pursuit of that common goal. As you well know, governments across the world are hard at work identifying ways to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic crisis and to rebuild national and global economies. And the UK is no exception. Since the earliest days of the COVID-19 crisis, we have been clear that we would not return to the status quo in the aftermath of the pandemic. On the contrary, we are committed to a vision of building back better, greener, faster, and fairer, seizing the initiative to level up our country, create equality of opportunity, and ensure that no place is left behind. Aspirations that I know every country represented at today's summit shares, and aspirations that we cannot deliver without BIM. As one of the truly global industries, the construction sector has a vital role to play in achieving this vision. In the UK, the sector is an economic engine, driving enormous benefits for people and places. In 2018, it had a turnover of £403 billion, accounting for 9% of the UK economy and employing 3.1 million people. That is very big, but of course it's not just the numbers that matter. The construction sector affects the lives of everyone in the UK, encompassing individual homes in remote rural areas, the densely built streets in our vast urban centres, and some of the great infrastructure projects of our generation across the country. Better, greener, fairer recovery that we want to see means thinking longer term and changing how we plan, design and deliver new projects in every corner of the UK for the benefit of everyone. Digital and off-site manufacturing technologies, such as BIM, will unlock the economic forces that increase job opportunities for individuals, unleash prosperity for all communities, and enable recovery from the economic impacts of COVID-19. And such a new approach is also vital if we are to achieve our legislative commitment to become a net zero nation by 2050. Better, more resilient infrastructure delivered through digitising construction will drive the improved performance of built assets and minimise the impacts of climate change. And more efficient information management delivered through BIM will also help to minimise waste, reducing the current volume of approximately 120 million tonnes a year produced by construction, demolition and excavation, accounting for nearly 60% of all UK waste. Delivering this will require us to collaborate across government and industry, and to share best practices more widely than that. The launch of the Global BIM Network will facilitate this process, bringing together policymakers from across the globe to address the digital capability of governments in delivering infrastructure that supports COVID-19 recovery, achieves net zero ambitions, and improves prosperity for all people and places. Thank you, and I wish you an enjoyable and productive summit.
Thank you, Madam Minister. The UK has had a continued commitment and it's been a terrific leader in the built environment in digital transformation, both domestically for the country and internationally. And that's really had a terrific impact on the shared goals that we share around the world around climate change, social inclusion, and economic prosperity. And we greatly appreciate your support and the support of the UK government. So today we're going to have 3 sessions with representatives from governments, multilateral institutions, and development banks from around the world. But we also would like to have some participation from you, the audience. We'll be running a number of polls today during the summit using this application called Slido, and you can see the information about that behind me on my screen. Use the event code Global BIM Summit as it appears on my screen. And then you can also ask questions during the Q&A sessions, which will be facilitated by Alana Gluck, my colleague, here at the Center for Digitally Built Britain. We're very much hoping that you'll take part and share your perspective with us during the summit today, as well as provide feedback on today's events. So let's get started with panel session number 1, where we're going to investigate questions of international collaboration. And for that panel, I'd like to introduce our panelists. We're going to talk today about the value of global collaboration and how that collaboration can improve the built environment. If I could ask my speakers, please, to turn their cameras and their audio on, I'll introduce everybody. First, representing the Czech Republic is Jaroslav Nahiba, who's the Director of BIM Strategy at the Czech Agency for Standardization. Hi, Jaroslav. Representing the United States is my friend Van Woods, who is a BIM Program Manager for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the Chair of the National Institute of Building Sciences BIM Council here in the U.S. Van, how are you?
Good.
Representing Singapore, my old friend Tai Fat Cheng, who I've worked with many years on this project, who's the Managing Director of the Built Environment and the Innovation Institute there in Singapore. Tai Fat, it's great to see you again.
No.
Representing the EU BIM Task Group is Suhail Subra, who's the chair of the task group. Suhail, nice to see you. And finally, representing the BIM Network of Latin American Governments is Carolina Soto, who's the president of that network. So we have an incredible lineup of folks here who are experts about these questions. So before we get started, we're going to hear a little bit from leaders across the globe about the impact of BIM on their built environment, and then we'll jump into our panel discussion.
ADB finances a lot of large infrastructure projects like roads and power plants and electrical distribution systems. Many of our developing member countries don't have access to the latest and greatest tools like BIM to design and build infrastructure. Our largest investment in our history was just approved last year for a railway system connecting Clark and Manila in the Philippines. Railway systems are very complicated because you have a lot of infrastructure disruption along the railway, community disruption, and if you have a BIM model of the system before you start building it, you can actually work with the communities and plan the infrastructure disruptions more effectively and basically deliver the project more quickly and with less risk.
So at the Hub, we're developing BIM tools and guidance that can be tailored to enable organisations to achieve the level of digital maturity required to prepare their businesses for the future. Through the groundbreaking work of our BIM Interoperability Expert Group, we are addressing information interoperability to enable the whole life beneficial outcomes of BIM to be delivered, not just for clients who own, operate and maintain assets, but for the whole construction industry.
El BIM en América Latina está partiendo hace unos pocos años, pero vemos que el sector privado está avanzando muy rápidamente. Los gobiernos se están poniendo al día, ya hay 8 países por lo menos con los cuales nosotros estamos trabajando en una red latinoamericana de BIM. Uno de los beneficios potenciales más importantes que nosotros vemos en el BIM es cuánto puede contribuir a la transparencia de una industria y un sector que en América Latina ha tenido muchos problemas. Nosotros como banco, por ejemplo, estamos ahora trabajando en Costa Rica con un proyecto que lo que hace es estudiar cuáles son los impactos en materia de transparencia que puede tener el BIM.
The U.S. has no single federal government agency responsible for construction of buildings. Responsibilities are shared across multiple agencies. NIBS is in the process of developing a national BIM program. We are developing it with stakeholders from across the country, government agencies, corporations, and architects, engineers, all the people who are involved in the building process. Each group will work together to find solutions so that we will come together to use one standard and one program to improve the industry.
Okay, lots of interesting points there in that video, but let's turn the discussion to our panel. And Carolina, I apologize for mispronouncing your name. I'm from North Carolina here in the United States, so it's 40 years of bad habits. Carolina, first, I'd like to ask you, can you talk a little bit about what you guys are trying to accomplish specifically in your BIM program? And if you could give us some examples, like specific examples, that would be great.
Yes, well, thank you, Phil. And it's okay with the pronunciation, it's no problem. So what we're trying to do here is similar to what we think is also what's happening with the EU BIM task group, is that we're trying to bring together the different government programs of our region and the representatives who are working in those programs, so we can all share our experiences and our knowledge in order for everyone to learn from each other and go faster. This is, of course, what I'm saying is like not inventing something really new. It's logical that if a lot of different governments are trying to do the same, we should all communicate to create synergy and to learn and go faster. But the other thing that is very important about these types of network like ours is that we are all representing the public sector, and so we are all trying to move the industry from the public sector using the purchasing power of the state to help the industry move to a better standard of doing things, of communicating information in the industry, etc. So what we're trying to do with the network, or one of the goals, is to end up with alignment in our region, between our different programs. So we don't end up with, now we have eight countries, but tomorrow we hope we have all the countries of the region, and we cannot end up with a region, with a Latin American region that has a lot of different ways in which doing BIM, because we want to be able to through BIM to break barriers between our countries, so we can share services, we can share knowledge, and we think that the way to move forward with that is doing it together. And the other important thing is that we're hoping to create validation and consistency for the government programs. You know that governments change every 4 years or every 6 years. So this means that if our different governments or if our different countries are trying to push the digital transformation of the industry, every 4 years or less, because changes in the governments take a while, but every 4 years, let's say that, the programs have to validate themselves in order to convince the new government and the new administration that this is something important. And it's different if you do it from the inside of your country, just you alone, than if you do it along with a lot of other countries that are saying and are pushing the same objectives and the same goals, because this means for the new government that this is something very important. So we're trying to create this consistency and validation, so we can do this in a way that is not broken, or you have to restart every 4 years, because that would make it all go very, very slow. And in terms of, you were asking for examples, we're trying to share. Of course, standards are a big thing, and I know this word is going to come up in a lot of times, probably in these panels. So we're trying to see what common lines or common alignments we can have between the different programs through using common standards, of course, aligning to ISO standards and other existing protocols, so we don't end up with a lot of different flavors of BIM, but we end up with a common language adapted to our different realities, but still a common language that enables us to share services, knowledge, etc.
And we'll come back to this concept of, I think, common language and standardization for a moment. But Caroline, I wonder if you could touch briefly on something that was discussed briefly in the video, which is this idea of transparency and what the government's interest is in construction transparency.
Yes, of course, this is a big topic and a big focus in BIM. And of course, we all have heard all the news that come every few months or years, that we have different cases of corruption, or in the construction industry is a space where we have problems of transparency. So the idea of having a tool, but also a methodology that will help us create or be more consistent and have a more traceable way in which the information is being created and shared, and then decisions are being made about the projects and public projects. Of course, is going to help us bring the level of transparency higher in our different countries. So this is one of the objectives of the different governments of our region that are using BIM or pushing BIM for their industries, is of course creating a more transparent industry.
And Suel, do those kinds of concepts resonate with the work that you're doing in the EU?
Yeah, definitely, Phil. I think we can find a lot of common ground there. Transparency, obviously, and also the fact that we need this common language. plus the fact that the EU BIM task group is working a lot on sharing best practice experience between countries. And this is very important for us because countries in the European Union are having different maturity levels regarding BIM. So we're learning from each other, which is great. And also, I think a major issue for us is to deliver practical guidance to public procurers, because once we've crossed the, we've went through the phase where public procurers are convinced of the use of BIM, the second question is, okay, so how do I do it? And this is very important. This is, I think we cannot leave them like that. We need to deliver practical guidance for them in order to be able to assist them in their BIM journey.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you give us an example of that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that some of the major questions we have today relate to the cost-benefit evidence. And this is basically the question that everybody's asking today. So once they start the BIM journey, the second question should be, okay, so how much will it cost, and what are the benefits? And these are very important questions because I think we are lacking of reliable information on that. There's a lot of figures out there, and we can discuss a lot, and you can find on the web a lot of things. But I think we are lacking reliable figures, knowing exactly what's happening and how these figures were calculated. And I think that sharing this information is really important in order to be able to assist policymakers and public procurers in their BIM journey.
Yeah, I think actually it would be great to ask Taifat about this, because I know from my work with Taifat in Singapore over the years that there's a very strong alignment between government policy and BIM execution strategy. So Taifat, could you talk a little bit about how those two things have worked together in Singapore and what kind of reliable information has come out of that, sort of what Sue has been talking about? Because the case has been made very clearly in Singapore.
Yeah, sure, Phil. So I'll probably share on the kind of approach that we are taking in Singapore to drive BIM adoption. One of the strategy that we did was, how do we create demand for the use of BIM? So by creating demand, I think one of the strategy we did was to get a public sector to take the lead, basically to stipulate, for example, the need to have a tender requirements stipulating the submission of BIM model. So that's one of the things that we did, is basically what can we do to create demand for BIM to be used in public sector projects. The other thing that we did was also, the next thing is, how then do you create supply of solutions to support the demand? So to create a supply of solutions, I think there are a few things that we did. We work with technology solution providers and also look at creating the collaborative platforms, and also specifying the kind of standards that we need to put in place across the whole industry, so that there's a structured manner to define and organize the information, and then subsequently you can have a seamless integration across the whole process. So we have a strategy to create demand, and we have a strategy also to create a supply of solutions. And the third thing I thought was important is also, how do you build capability to support the execution of those things that you wish to implement. So the capability, again, will have to come at different tiers, different levels, because across the whole value chain, you have a very multifaceted industry, developers, consultants, contractors, subcontractors, and all of them would need to have different skill sets at the different stages of the processes. So we also need to come up with programs and so-called certification kind of competency to make sure that we are able to produce different skill sets of personnel to tackle different stages across the value chain. So these are the broad three approaches that we take in order to try to drive the adoption of BIM in Singapore.
I think what's been interesting over the years, watching what's happened in Singapore is how you have set a sort of an example, not only for Asia, but for the rest of the world. Have you seen in this, in the spirit of international collaboration, other countries sort of picking up your cues, following your lead, following the path that you've laid down?
Okay. Maybe I should add that because this is a Global BIM Summit, why I think is good that we have this kind of forum, which I think the minister in the opening speech also mentioned about having a shared vision and a forum for discussion. I think the outcome that we wanted for all of us in the built environment, and she also mentioned, is to move to a built environment that's more efficient and more productive. So when we embark our BIM journey, I think one of the first things that we did was also to learn from other countries. I think if you remember, we also visited you in the States. I think from Adam, we also visited you in the UK. Yeah, and we also spent some time in Hong Kong. So as we conceptualize and formulate the action plan, I think it helps a lot for us as we go around talking to people in the various countries. What are the lessons learned? What are the things that the good practices that we need to have? And then after that, how do we curate it in our own country? I think that approach is something that we find is very relevant and useful as we embark on our own journey. That's why I think this Global BIM Summit is really an excellent forum for all of us to come together to share the learning points.
Yeah, I think that's what we're hoping for.
Yeah.
So Yaroslav, talk a little bit about your perspective on this problem of both your national BIM standard and how you feel like you could collaborate internationally with the work that you're doing in the Czech Republic.
Yes, well, I can share one of our example. I can demonstrate it on a topic called classification system, because it's one of the part of the, let's say, digital common language, which we needed to share the data and transforming it from one or into the other solutions and information systems. So we had two options at the start. Start inventing something on a national level, or look for something and for some cooperation. Because our headline in our national strategy is not inventing the wheel again and again. So we choose naturally the second option. So that was 2019, and we had great success with some other countries last year, establishing a non-profit international organization called Construction Classification International Collaboration, which has the vision to advocating and adopting the common construction classification system. So it was a great success for us, and we're running that organization for one year right now, and we learn lots of things from each other, because we start when you put the people on the same table, you can really quickly start finding that you have the similar issues, similar needs, and it's pretty nice when you know you are not alone and you can share your concerns and smart ideas which could easily turn into the blind ways. So that's great example of our cooperation.
So Van, here on our side of the Atlantic Ocean, where we have rocket sky-high adoption and standards not so much, what do you feel like the role of this question, what do you feel like the standard that we're working on here in the US, how might it be informed by some international collaboration here, as opposed to us just kind of going it alone?
That's a great question. I agree with everything that everybody on the panel has kind of said. We've all kind of shared these experiences, and I think that's one of the most exciting things about this collection of people coming together and having a forum to do that discussion. Because even in the U.S., when you know, as Phil has mentioned, our adoption rate of BIM is high. We even have investment in the construction technology sector is very high. It's a lot of innovation, but the standardization is still not fully adopted into our projects as a regular course of action. So it's really a lot about, I think, the prior comment about reinventing the wheel. You know, we've seen a lot of efforts where there are a lot of really smart and really forward-looking organizations that are achieving real investment, real return on investment on their projects, but we're not seeing that consistently across the board. And BIM really doesn't amount to one specific thing. I think there's been a lot of emphasis on recreating some of our drawing and specification-based processes. But we still have a long way to go, and I think we have a lot to learn from other countries on the fact that we're still using drawings and specs from a legal standpoint. So I think there is a lot that we see. We've been working with the UK, had a lot of great discussions, and I think this is just a good example of a time where the broad awareness of the fact that we all can't individually solve this problem. They're changing an industry and the digital transformation of that.
Oops, are we losing you, Van?
So we will all share all the same challenges. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we were losing you there for a second, but I think we followed the point. I mean, here in the States, one of our challenges is high adoption, low standards, and that balance between the two is something that we've got to work on as an international challenge. So I'd like to ask everyone to briefly talk a little bit about what the primary barriers to alignment might be, and we're gonna. We've done a little bit of polling here, and it looks like from the attendees that are online here, 67% are saying that standards alignment has been impacted by international collaboration. So it'd be interesting to know just briefly from each of you, what your relationship has been with with international efforts. And Yaroslav, let's start with you.
We are here because we are a small country with a small economy. So again, the idea we will be the leaders and we will be inventing all the things, it's really not on the table. So we are naturally aligning, looking for the standards for cooperation. So international standards for us is a big topic for us, and the biggest challenge is how to adopt the international standards and experience into our national social environment. Because when we are talking about the BIM, don't forget about the people, because the technology and the software solutions we can buy if we have the money. It's the easiest thing we can do. But the people will be the key point which will decide if we are successful or we fail. So we are heavily focusing on the people. Yeah.
Okay.
And the knowledge.
Carolina?
Yes, I think I agree with what's been said. I mean, Van was saying something, or you were saying something, that you in the US, you have high adoption but low use of standards. Here we have low adoption and low use of standards. So we're facing both challenges at the same time. But it's a bad thing, but it's also a good thing, because when you already adopted it and you didn't learn to use it with standards, then you need to change what you're doing, and always change is difficult for people, for everyone, for us.
Yeah. Hey, Van, did you hear that? What she said? Did you hear that, Van? Exactly what Carolina said. Oh. Sorry, go ahead.
100%.
So here we're trying, since for a big part of the industry, we're starting from zero. We're trying to have the industry understand that they have to start from the beginning, understanding this is about standards, it is about standardized information. So it's a bad thing, but it's also, we can use it as a good thing to start start okay from the beginning. And the good thing is that the governments of the country, so the ones that are participating in our network, they're all we are all adopting international standards. So every country is adopting or has already adopted as a national norm the different ISOs, the 19650, and they're also looking into other norms. And we're also, all the countries, looking into protocols that are already not just norms, protocols from the US, from Australia, from different parts of the world. So we're trying to get the opportunity to change something bad about the law of adoption into a good thing, that we do it from the beginning in a better way, in a standardized way.
And Suel, do you feel like you're getting that kind of international traction with the EU group, or is it still men and women of goodwill?
Yeah, I think the traction coming from the EU is very, very important, and this is keeping us running. The link with international work is very, very important also. I mean, all the standards, the international standards, are very important, obviously. But I wanted to share with you my feeling is I don't think that this technical issue is the major barrier for BIM adoption. Basically, I feel that the major barrier is the resistance to change, and this is, I mean, this we can see every day. I mean, the construction sector is somehow reluctant to change the way it's doing business. And if we push it towards something that is more adaptable, more agile, more efficient, we will be witnessing some resistance, obviously, because we are changing also the value chain. And this is obviously, it raises a lot of questions, right? So I think this is the major problem, in fact.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the most important things about what we're doing here today, is that trying to move the industry from the top down, from the infrastructure demand side, at least in my experience as both an architect and a educator and a technologist, that's the fastest way to move things quickly. So Taifet, just briefly, you have been a leader in international efforts from Singapore. Tell us a little bit about how you're going to continue doing that from your perspective in Asia.
Sure. I think first, I think the various panel has talked about standardization, and I think it's important that we do align to international standards as much as possible in the areas that we are doing, and for that, I think Singapore has been a member of the Building Smart International. So a lot of things that we do, we will try to have alignment with that. But I just want to add on to what Sobro has said. I think what we are really dealing with is really about change management, not just about adopting a solution per se, but it's really about change management. And when change management is concerned, I think we usually talk about the three components: the people, the system, and the process level.
Yep.
Which means on the strategy and the implementation plan, we really have to take have an oversight on all these three components in order to enable the different firms and individuals as they embrace this new technology to help them along to embrace this BIM. So I think because most of the time we may lose sight on the people part, which is about the building capability. Because without people, I think no matter what standards you have, no matter what good software you have, it will be very difficult to execute it in any project or in any firms. So in Singapore, we do spend a lot of time in making sure that we build up enough competency in this area as we transform along. Yeah.
Well, I think looking at my screen, I think we may have lost Van, but I will say on behalf of those of us working on this project in the US that we have a lot of lessons to learn from the good work that we're seeing. Oh, there you are, Van, you're coming back. But we're going to wrap up this session. Lots of interesting things happening here. A lot of interesting themes about strategy and the will to cooperate internationally. Thank you to the panelists in session number one. We clearly have a lot of work to be done here, but lots of really good synergies, I think. So panel one or session one panelists, okay to flip off your cameras, and we're going to move on now to session number two. Thank you. So in session two, we're going to talk about this question of having identified in session one a kind of clear desire for everyone to cooperate. Now we're going to talk more specifically about how to build a global network around this question. And I don't really know anyone who's a bigger expert on that question than my friend and colleague Adam Matthews. We're going to show, as I understand it, we're going to show a brief video about the creation of a global BIM network, and then Adam and I are going to have a short conversation about this question before we move on to our next panel. So Alana, you're going to show the next video?
Building information modeling. It's a collaborative methodology that brings together trustworthy data, technology, process, standards, and importantly, workforce skills.
Since the UK government's 2011 construction strategy, BIM implementation has driven sector-wide digitisation. But more than just impacting construction, we are now beginning to unlock the opportunities for improved value of the whole life of assets.
The digital opportunity that the construction sector faces with the introduction of digital is huge. The sector itself is valued at around $10 trillion per year globally. And the estimate for savings that digital could bring to that is around $250 billion per year. That's huge.
Una de las promesas más importantes que para nosotros tiene el BIM es cuánto nos puede ayudar también a combatir los efectos del cambio climático, a mitigar los efectos del cambio climático y a disminuir los efectos de cambio climático. ¿Por qué? Porque la industria de la construcción es uno de los sectores que genera más desperdicios.
Financing infrastructure is very complex, and using BIM makes it easier to communicate with our partners what the actual infrastructure is and identify the design constraints and the risks up front, which makes it easier to bring together a consortium of partners.
The construction industry is historically siloed. Having to develop individually what is essentially needed by all is inefficient. While states and organizations have different practices and systems, the components of building and infrastructure are essentially the same from project to project.
The Global BIM Network is really about bringing everybody together. It's not about any one individual country or any one particular region. It's about bringing all of that learning together and creating better outcomes for people and places. This is about the United Nations of BIM.
So Adam, let's chat. You and I have been working on this problem for many, many years, and it feels like we're at a tipping point here with the creation of this global BIM network. It feels like things that we've been talking about literally for decades are starting to come together. Can you talk a little bit about the purpose of the network and who's in it, and just tell us a little bit about the network a bit?
Sure, thanks, Bill. Yeah, I think this is as you heard from the first panel, there are a couple of aspects to this. One is about building knowledge and addressing some capability and capacity issues from the public sector side in particular. And one is also about the need for doing things better, and a recognition that we're all part of a global construction sector here. We use similar methods. We've got international standards. We're actually also, as governments, we're one of the largest spenders in the construction sector. Certainly as an individual collective client, anyway. So I think we heard in the panel discussion there that there is a tremendous recognition the value of that collaboration that we've all seen. The collaboration that we've had with, for instance, with TIFAT in Singapore, which goes back to 2012, 2013. And we've had benefit from that as well as the UK, and I'm pretty sure TIFAT would reflect similar. So the idea behind this network is to say, okay, we're all trying to work on the same problem here. We recognize that we can improve that learning by sharing what's working in our own countries, and even what's not working to some extent. And also that helps to then accelerate learning, that helps to build capacity in the public sector, so that the public sector can also be a great partner with the private sector and with academia. Clearly, this isn't a one-sided conversation. This needs to be all parties, but it does recognize that the public sector have a role. And I guess
one question I'd have then is, ever since that famous meeting we had in London years ago, where Paul Morrell announced the UK initiative, the UK has taken a real leadership role. Mm-hmm. And can you talk a little bit about what the thinking was there and how you think that the UK's role is going to play out here? And I thought your statement about being a partner to both the private sector and academia is particularly telling here. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think from the UK experience, I'll just answer your part B first, if I can. I think the UK experience has certainly been one of government and industry working together, and I include academia and the standards organization and technology partners in that as well. I think the experience has been that BIM is inclusive, right? I think we can all agree that there is an inclusivity around it. There's a collaboration at the heart of it, and I think that idea translates not only within a country but also across borders. So why has the UK funded this? Why is the UK helping to lead some of this initiative? I think there are a couple of reasons. One, from the early days of our collaboration with Singapore and with Carolina in Chile and with Sohail in France and Yaroslav and other colleagues. More recently, Van, as you know, in the US and Lakeisha Woods, Chief Exec of NIBS. I think what we've all gathered from that is that we all benefit. Actually, I'm going to use a quote that Van said to me a little while ago, which was that if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I think that's a really hits the right note. We've benefited as the UK from the international collaborations that we've had, recognition that this is a global market as well. And I would say there's also an opening of the market, an interoperability of the markets. We talk about interoperability a lot of times with reference to standards and technical issues. I would absolutely endorse Sohail's comment that was, the issues are less around technical and they're typically more around us as people and engaging people. So for me, one of the big things that the UK is hoping to see is, and others that are participating, our partners, is this idea of sharing capabilities across borders. What does that mean? It means also trade. It means opportunities for all of us in terms of more easily trading upon a common language that we share.
So, the UK has set an example here. Talk a little bit about your thoughts about the underlying rationale for our global network, and particularly the public sector's need to build such a network. Is there something particularly unique about the public sector's demands? Is it easier for the public sector to build consensus rather than the private sector? Why the public sector?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of aspects to this, Phil. I think one, there is a recognition that the public sector can be a catalyzer, can inspire, can help to trigger that change that Sohail was referring to. And a number of our panelists earlier were speaking about that idea of being a supporter of this and a driver. There are clearly opportunities for the public sector to gain as well as guardians, as custodians of the built environment. There's a recognition that digital, as we heard earlier in the minister's keynote speech, that there's a recognition that digital is a way of helping us to recover from the pandemic, help to build a more performant built environment, help to get better value for taxpayers' money, increase transparency, as Carolina was saying. So it's not only, so it's kind of twofold. One, I think the public sector have a specific role and can play a role to helping to encourage this. But secondly, there is also this recognition of benefits being accrued by both the private sector and the public sector through this collaboration.
Okay, so if that's the case, we've established that we want to build this global network. We've established that the public sector can really drive it, that the public sector can emphasize the benefits in a way that are amplified. What is this network going to deliver? What are the actual outcomes?
Yeah, okay, exactly.
Like a platform, a manifesto.
Yeah, we talk about the fact we don't want we don't want to create groups and networks that are just talking shops, which is a phrase we would use in the UK, where we just sort of get together and just talk a lot. We actually want to deliver something as well. So the first focus of our year one roadmap is to build, and it's live today, is a global knowledge platform where we can, online knowledge platform where we can share knowledge, we can share what we're doing at the national level, at the regional level, at the global level, whether it be about standards, whether it be about capacity building. So this platform is live. We could actually demonstrate it now as well. If we have a minute, maybe I could ask Pauline to share the screen and we can just have a quick look. Great, thanks. So this website has just gone live today. This will be our repository for the information collections where we're sharing these global resources from across the public sector and private sector.
So everybody screen cap this image here so you have this reference.
So the website is globalbim.org, all one word. Globalbim.org is the website. It's completely open. It is going to be contributing all of that national level, regional level resources, whether it would be about case studies, it's about standards development, or be it about national roadmaps and strategies, or about communities of practice, for instance, that are growing up in different regions. So absolutely, Phil, to your question, this isn't just going to be a network about talking with each other and sharing ideas. There is going to be something tangible in addition to that knowledge sharing that we have and those meetings we have. There is this knowledge base that we're going to be growing and expanding upon over the next year.
Okay, so now everybody knows where to go to and who to talk to and where to find the information. How is the network itself going to organize? How are we going to structure this thing?
So the idea is that we'll have a steering committee, we'll have a group. You've seen some of the panelists earlier. We're going to have a conversation shortly with some of the steering committee members of this group as well. We'll also be having an advisory group that'll be comprised of some multilateral organizations like the Inter-American Development Bank, the Asian Development Bank, the United Nations Ops team, and a few others. So we can get some good ideas of how we can act and provide value. And lastly, we'll have what we refer to as the General Assembly. That's everybody in the global network from a public sector perspective. We are a public sector network. We absolutely want to have the private sector sign up. So go onto the website and do sign up and do connect with us. And if you're from the private sector, we'll be sharing updates as well on a regular basis, but also looking for opportunities longer term as to how we can engage with the private sector as well.
Okay, that's really helpful. So now we can see this thing starting to come into focus. I'd like to invite our second session panelists. Adam, stay with us. Ngoc Bin Ta, who's known as Bin from Vietnam, representing the Ministry of Construction, will join us. Hey, Bin. Suhail is going to rejoin us from the EU, and Carolina from Latin America. And these are folks who are going to be central in this new structure and organization that Adam is describing. And what I'd like to talk about amongst this group that's going to really be energizing this whole idea of the network is specifically what you feel the global network is going to add as a value add to your individual efforts in various parts of the world. And Suhail, can you start? And then I'd like to hand it to Ben after that.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a great opportunity, in fact, to be able to be networking with people coming from various countries and overcoming the language barrier. This is very important because obviously we have the ability to meet people that we don't meet usually. So this is, I mean, we are widening the spectrum here, and it is very important. Another idea I had is that it happens in a time that is really weird, in a sense that we are in the middle of a pandemic. And I feel that this pandemic is changing rapidly the way that we are doing business and organizing remote working methods and so on. And I feel that this change is going to be sustainable, because even after the recovery from the pandemic, people and companies will have changed their ways to do business and connect. And in that sense, I feel that the ambition of the global network can be the following: to become the online reference platform for networking around BIM. And I think it is a very important opportunity. It's also a challenge, because the pandemic is really disturbing everybody. But in a sense, it can also be an opportunity in order to become this reference platform where people meet and exchange ideas online. And everybody's rethinking the way they're doing business. And I think it is the opportunity to do that in a very specific way, and to be able to be able to prepare the new normal phase that we'll be facing.
Yeah, we definitely have proven here today that we don't have to get on airplanes and dump carbon in the atmosphere and eat bad food in hotel conference rooms. So that's definitely the case. Ben, what about yourself? How do you feel like the global network might add some value to the work that you're doing with the Ministry of Construction?
Thank you, Phil. So, in fact, when we started our BIM journey in Vietnam, we learned a lot from other countries. It was a great start to have a government BIM symposium in Singapore that Thai Fat and also you, Phil, have coordinate that effort. And we learn a lot from this sharing. We have a lot of lesson learned from that. Frankly, between public sector, each country have its own goal and vision, but we need example from other countries to trying to push our roadmap and program back in our country. For example, let's just take the diamond framework from EU BIM handbook. When we report to our leadership, we need to also convene to them that other country, what are the current status of other country, and then how we can learn from other country to when we're implementing BIM in our country. And then of course, when we talk about standard collaborative framework, now I think that no country start to write BIM guide, BIM standard from scratch. We all look in other country to see what has been done, and then what part we can learn from that. As a matter of fact, today we have a meeting to develop a proposal to the Prime Minister, and then we are searching from for some information about like a policy and standard in China, and we found a lot of good and useful information. I think that in all country, public sector and government entity have done a lot of things, but then we don't publish enough. So it is really a challenge to kind of have information from other countries, to learn from each other, to avoid failure. Because I remember that in one of the BIM government BIM symposium, there's a comment that we all talk about a success story, but I haven't heard a lot of like a failure and lesson from other. So having a network and having a place where we can put information in for other to kind of read, and then from that is a huge impact for everyone.
Yeah, and best practices.
Yes.
And so, Carolina, you're building a network, and you mentioned earlier that you have 8 countries and that you might want to try to make your network bigger. Do you feel like this global collaboration is going to help in that regard, or how will it accelerate your efforts?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the global collaboration feels like the expansion. We are already thinking and working in terms of collaborating, and of course this is for our network. This is constrained to our region. So having the ability as countries and as network to through the global network to collaborate and learn and also show what we've done to the rest of the world, I think it's a great opportunity for us. It is already being useful, even if it hasn't started officially or is starting officially today, because we in the making, in the process, we have already had a lot of meetings, and we've met people we had never met before. I had never met Suel or Vin before the meetings regarding the global network. We had not really heard of the details of some of the European programs or the Asian programs that we heard of in the pre-events last week and the week before that. And we're saying, oh, okay, so there are people who have already solved or are very advanced in solving some things that we're now just starting to think how to face. So this is we're completely sure that this is going to be useful, because even it has already been useful, even if it hasn't really officially started. And I wanted to take something that Bin said. We feel this is a very important place to be able to share or learn about failure, because of course we all our countries and all our groups, we're trying to show what is working and what could be useful, but it's useful, it's equally useful to learn about what doesn't work, so we don't each countries repeat paths that are not going to take us anywhere. So we hope that the global network creates like a trust. I don't know the word, but a safe space, or a space where there's a lot of trust between the participants, so we can share what went well, but also what went wrong.
And that could be incredibly useful, I think, for the whole industry, a place where we can actually trust each other to talk about our failures. That'd be a global first. So Adam, briefly, before we hand it over to Alana, touch briefly on how the network's going to relate to the private sector.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things to say. One, first of all, is if the private sector want to get involved with the global network, then please do sign up. Go to globalbim.org and sign up there, and we'll be providing updates. Of course, there is a second part to my answer here, which is an idea first, which is that clearly there, as a public sector network and multilateral organizations, there is some sensitivity about favoring one organization, for instance, or one private sector network over another. So there is sensitivity. I just want to be completely transparent about that, which is why we're not suggesting it's a completely open network for the time being. It will be one of the discussion points that we have in our formation of the global network as to how do we do that involvement with the private sector longer term. So the first answer is absolutely sign up for updates. We will be having meetings during the year where we hope to publish what we're doing and request ideas from the private sector. And that was my final point, is that we'd really welcome ideas, especially on the global knowledge platform. If there are ideas, and there will be ideas out there about what could be included and added and considered by this public sector network to focus on in its roadmap as it goes forward, we're absolutely very, very open and welcome to those suggestions.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. And thank you, panelists. Very much appreciate your insights on this question during our second panel. I'm now going to turn it over to our colleague Alana Gluck, who is the policy lead for CDBB, and she has a question about broadening the network to include more participants. Alana?
Thanks, Phil. And yes, I think that this is a question for Adam. So in the live Q&A, we've had a number of questions and requests from countries, including Thailand and South Africa and others, on how other nations can become involved in this global BIM network and also provide their national BIM resources on globalbim.org website. Can you give us some instructions on how best to contact us?
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, we are, as a membership organization, completely open to the public sector being involved in the network, and we would welcome any country and all countries to participate. So that's the first thing, which is it's a completely open invitation for everyone to be involved. To get involved, please do connect with us on globalbim.org. Do send us a note through there. You can sign up, but also send us a note through that website. And we will also provide an email very shortly as well, which you can connect with on there as well. It's at the bottom of the globalbim.org website. You'll find it right below the sign up panel just there. Thanks for the question, Alana.
Okay, terrific. Thanks, everyone. I really feel like we're at a particular moment in this BIM journey that's been going on now for almost 2 decades, where we're really going to start to see some collaboration, and we're going to start to see some synergies, as they say, and we're going to begin to see some both acceleration of standards and diffusion of standards. And in a way, sort of philosophically, that's what we want to see the network do. We want to see it accelerate people's understanding of BIM and their implementation, but also diffuse best practices through both successes and, as I think Carolina said, failures, which is pretty interesting. So let's move on to panel session number 3, where we're going to talk a little bit about infrastructure investment and how infrastructure investment can help move digital transformation forward. And you know, if the global network represents a coalition of the willing, amongst the public sector. The biggest lever that the public sector has to move standards forward is projects, is actually putting work into the supply chain and asking the supply chain to operate in that regard. And in my observation during my years of research and work in the building industry is that there are high degrees of interest and collaboration, sort of bottom up from the suppliers, designers, builders, subcontractors, but we need the organizing influence of our clients. We need the organizing influence of the people who actually bring us together to build things. And so we're going to talk about in this panel the influence for alignment and how alignment can be helped through the global network. And so for this panel, which will really be about transformation, I want to invite Thomas Abel, who you saw in the video earlier from the Asia Development Bank, from the Inter-American Development Bank as Claudia Salznabar, from the EU is Electra Papadaki, and from the UN Ops is Nihal Munoz Oro. And we're gonna collect this group, august group, to talk about how they feel a global BIM network and the demands that construction of the global infrastructure can put on the idea of digital transformation. And during this session, we're going to run, as I understand it, one of these live Slido polls. So jump on Slido so you can answer some of these questions. So I guess for starters, maybe Claudia, we'll start with you. Let's talk a little bit about the leverage that you feel like you have from infrastructure investment in the region that you work on. What levers do you feel like you can push and pull?
Thank you, Phil. Hello, everyone. At IDB, we are a financier of public investment in the Latin American and the Caribbean region. We don't do just financing. Part of our objectives are also capacity development in the country. So these sort of go hand in hand. And the type of objectives we pursue when we're financing infrastructure and in general, public investment programs in the region is one, trying to ensure standards of sustainability are being maintained, gender and diversity standards and inclusion standards. With regards to objectives, what we look for in our infrastructure projects is for this to be aligned with other larger development objectives that the bank is seeking to achieve. So from the purely infrastructure point of view, as I was saying, sustainability is an issue, efficiency in the development of construction projects is another goal, and the improvement of the quality of the infrastructure. And we will work with our counterparts in the governments in the region in order to generate capacities for them to be able to comply with international standards. And also we include some requirements in the financing we give out. So it's basically requirements in the financing plus advice and capacity building at the country level. And we will do this at the project level, but we will also do this at the policy level. So one of the things we've been working on with BIM is trying to finance national government BIM initiatives. So for instance, the regional Latin American network that Carolina presented a little bit ago received funding from the IDB to jumpstart its operations for the first 3 years. We are supporting directly some countries that are launching their national BIM policy initiatives through capacity building and through funding for them to implement initiatives such as talent development, digital talent development, or development of standards. So we will work both at the project level and at the policy level.
And I think those are the kinds of seismic forces that can really realign standards in the building industry, which I think are pretty important. Thomas, Could you respond to Claudia's strategy, which was about sort of country level, project level, policy level, and talk a little bit about whether those mechanisms are the same as you're using in at the Asia Development Bank? What resonated?
Absolutely. Thanks, Phil. Yeah, I would say what Claudia said about is very similar to the way ADB operates. You know, we have the same basic objectives. We're financing infrastructure, and we want to make sure that that infrastructure is delivered efficiently, effectively, and meets our development objectives, you know, around climate and gender and impact, economic impact. And BIM, you know, basically helps on all those dimensions. And many of our clients are developing countries that don't have access. Their building industries aren't as sophisticated. And so we also provide a lot of technical assistance along with our lending to do innovations in areas like BIM. For example, we're just launching a project in Nauru to build, a port. And, you know, during the pandemic, this is, it's very hard for our teams to do any monitoring because we can't travel there. So we've actually created a project, a technical assistance to use drone technology that basically tracks the construction project and compares that to the BIM model on a daily basis in order to make sure that the construction is happening on schedule and according to design. And this is also a company that, you know, that we're working with. You know, we also invest in startups in some of these areas and through our ADB Ventures work. So there are many ways, and we also, I would say, we use regional, you know, cooperation. We host several regional cooperation initiatives like CARIC and the Greater Mekong. And we use those to try to get, you know, standards aligned across the regions as well, where there's, you know, opportunity to share between countries.
Thank you. So, Electra, I'm wondering whether, given the number of years that the EU has been working on, say, BIM standards, whether you see good alignment between the initiatives that are happening at the infrastructure level versus the technology level. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, thank you for the question, Phil. I don't understand your point on infrastructure level versus technology level.
Well, what I'm observing is that the BIM standards, for example, in the EU are probably, say, farther ahead than they are in, say, the US or even in Asia. I'm wondering to the extent to which infrastructure investors are reflecting that more advanced state or trying to accelerate it. Does that make sense?
No, not really. No.
No, dumb question.
I'm
okay.
sure it's not dumb, but
no, it's just what I'm just wondering. So, for example, what Thomas was saying was they are using investment to accelerate technology adoption. Well, technology adoption is not as much of an issue in the EU, and the EU has more advanced standards than, say, we do here in the US.
Okay, fair. Yes, I get your point.
Now,
okay.
Am I making sense? Sorry.
Yes, of course.
I often have to repeat my questions to my students 3 times, so it's no problem at all.
Don't worry. Look, yes, maybe if you compare and indeed you have the global picture, you could say that we are in a more privileged position, but it's not that we don't see the issues. That's why we work in double sense in EU level to help the industry accelerate the efforts to digitalize, because the problem of digitalization of construction is international. Even if you claim that in one part of the world does better than not, when we put down the different industrial sectors, construction has this, how can I say, more difficult reflexes to digitalize. So there we are working on investments in innovation. We are working on different applications. We are funding through the Horizon 2020, that was our previous research and innovation program, and the Horizon Europe that's coming now to see BIM working with circular economy, for example, or with energy efficiency. We are doing all of this. And on the same time, indeed, we work with creating demand with the different governments, with the different member states and public clients to make sure that they are aligned, that as holders of a big part of the budget for construction and infrastructure, they are creating fair conditions in the market for the use of digital technologies.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So, Nihal, in terms of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, do you feel as if there is a good alignment around the policy implications of SDGs, the need to build infrastructure globally, and the idea of technology adoption to make that happen? What's the relationship between those three things?
Well, thank you, Phil. Definitely, there is a strong relationship between the SDGs and innovation and technology and infrastructure projects. As a matter of fact, one of the SDGs, SDG number 9, is industry, innovation, and infrastructure, which is at the heart of, basically infrastructure is at the heart of the efforts of sustainable development, and it impacts either directly or indirectly all the other 16 SDGs when we're talking about poverty, increase the education, increase the water and sanitation, and so forth. So infrastructure, at the end of the day, we try to not look at infrastructures only as separate assets, but we tend to look at it as networks and as systems. We try to look at it as the service that is provided by the infrastructure. Either it's a bridge, we don't look at it as a single bridge, but a way to connect two separate communities in order to increase the market, increase the level, the quality life of the community itself. So at the end of the day, yes, there is a direct impact, not only in sustainability, but also when we incorporate the resilience factor to the equation. There we can increase, I would say, exponentially the positive impact to the communities itself. COVID-19 is a clear example of that.
Right.
If we have resilient infrastructure that can withstand shocks and guarantee that the infrastructure assets can keep on providing the services they were designed to and built to provide, everybody is a beneficiary at the end of the day.
So it's interesting because I'm really interested in your description of infrastructure as systems of systems, kind of meta systems, because in a way, BIM as a technology allows us in the building industry to begin to build a similarly parallel digital system of systems. But the only way that's really going to work is if we can scale it so everybody's not inventing their own representational schemas, their own strategies, and so forth. So, okay, I want to ask everybody a tricky question that you'll have to formulate a little bit on the fly here. So it's a two-part question. I'd like to give each one of you a chance to answer it briefly, starting with you, Claudia. So the first half of the question is, if you had to pick the most important thing that was going to happen in investment or multilateral infrastructure, let's just say infrastructure investment in the next 5 years, the most important thing that your organization was going to focus on, what would it be, and how would BIM and this network help accelerate it? So in other words, you have all the power to pick the most important thing and tell the network what to do. What would you do? Claudia, you want to go first? That'll give these other guys a chance to think about this.
I'm going to say, I'm going to choose two. I know I'm not complying with the rules. So I started.
Breaks the rules. First question. Okay, go ahead. We'll consider that extra credit, not breaking the rules. Okay.
I would say it's transparency and sustainability. And I think we've heard from previous panelists, Latin America, we're coming out of a few decades of very lots of scandals that have shaken the construction industry to the core. I think being able to deliver transparency through BIM is going to be one of the key aspects that the region is going to benefit from. And second, I think it's impact on sustainability. We are not working in Latin America as strongly yet on proving the green impact of BIM and using it as a tool as part of our tools to promote sustainability in investment. So I think going forward, this is two big things for the region.
Yeah, and interestingly, the audience seems to agree with you. Alana just ran a quick poll that said that the majority of the audience actually supports. So no markdown for not following the rules of the test and extra credit.
Thank you.
Thomas, what do you think?
Thanks. I agree. I really think that climate sustainability is accelerating, and the amount of infrastructure that's going to be needed, to build and to transform, is going to be accelerating. And also in our region, urbanization is another trend. Where we live in a region of megacities, and those also need much more integrated and effective design capabilities that I think BIM can bring along.
Yeah, that's
Thanks.
a really good one. Okay, let's see. Who wants to go next? Electra, you want to go next?
Yes, I can go next. The emergency right now is the climate emergency, and this is the top priority for the EU for the years to come with the EU Green Deal. And this didn't change even in the context of COVID and the money that is invested to the resilience and the recovery that remains a green objective. So everything that we do in the built environment has to look towards this direction, that the building stock decarbonizes, that we use less energy to heat and cool our homes. And of course, in any case, digitalization is not an objective by itself. It has to serve a greater goal. And there we speak about the people and the planet.
Okay. All right, Nihal, you can bring this question home.
Thank you, Phil. Well, like Claudia, I would like to add to say two things. First of all, in the next 5 years, I would like to see the public sector strengthen their capacities not only in the use of BIM and technology, but in the complete life cycle and supply chain of producing public infrastructure. Yep. And by adopting the technology, not only BIM, but also evidence-based tools to do a proper planning and configuration of the investment portfolio in public infrastructure, we would have a very positive impact not only in the economic side, but also in the environmental and last but not least the social. And not only focus on the tool itself in the design and how the tool helps us to increase transparency and so forth, but go beyond and focus on open markets, focus on value for money, even before the procurement stage of design and the project itself. And the second thing is to actually try to reduce the gap between the public sector and the private sector, because that would help enormously achieve the goals that we are talking about here. As you know,
capability gap. What sort of a gap?
The capability gap, technological gap, resources. Well, the public sector has resources. Through some of them have the own governments have the monetary resources, but also the multilateral banking institution and so forth. But also policy-wise, agility, in order to to bring closer together those worlds, as some panelists mentioned earlier. Typically, the private sector is a couple of years ahead from the public sector. At least that is the case in most of the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. So each time that we reduce the gap, we increase the possibility to end or reduce corruption in our countries.
That's an interesting way to look at that.
And when we reduce, close the doors to corruption, the efficiency of the investment, the return on investment, it increases basically.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, the whole society gets the general benefits from that.
That's terrific. Okay, so Alana has been monitoring the polling, and she would like to ask each of the panelists a quick question. Alana?
Hi all, thank you again, Phil. So we do have a question from the audience, from your perspective as multilateral organizations and investment organizations, what would the advice be for upper middle income developing countries like the Dominican Republic to convince the public sector to collaborate on the uptake of BIM, both in country and collaboratively with other nations?
Anybody want to jump in?
Well, join the Global BIM network. That's the obvious starting point. I think that it really helps to associate it with specific projects so that, that it can gain traction more effectively. And then, utilize our organizations for, financing and technical assistance and creating a cross regional network.
Actually, I think Dominican Republic just recently created their BIM chamber in the private sector, and I think this is a very good way to start in order to convince the public sector to jump in. I think there has to be a high-level conversation about the benefits of this for Dominican Republic, and right now, governments are really worried with the fiscal constraints they're facing, and talking about efficiency is something that I think ministries of finance, who's in the end the ones that are going to decide, are going to be very happy to listen about. So I think that's in order to start the conversation with the public sector, I think making them see this benefits that could be achieved. I think it's a very good point to start, and I completely agree with Thomas. The demonstration effect of projects is huge on this.
May I feel also?
Please.
Yes. Thank you. I think it's very important to have the two parts of the story. Of course, one is international collaboration, because you need to know the global pictures and see what you can learn from the others. But it's also very important to do the right steps internally in the country. So we speak about adoption of BIM, but the handling of infrastructure, buildings, of public budgets, it's already shared between many different authorities. Many people have competency, and very often we see that a problem in adoption is a lack of communication internally, sometimes between ministries, sometimes between agencies. So all of this need to be clear from the beginning, and needs political leadership in order to bring all these people together. And another aspect that everybody spoke for the role of industry, and of course I agree on that, but I think also the role of academia is very important. You cannot put BIM requirements in procurement when there is no educational system to provide with people that can fill these roles in the companies, that can fill these roles in administration.
Thanks. So Nihal, you want to close this question out?
Yes, thank you, Phil. One piece of advice I would say is start small. Start with a prototype, and start with a pilot project. You don't necessarily have to implement BIM the complete life cycle of BIM and to the highest level of BIM in a single project. You can start, for example, in the design phase, and set up the standards corresponding to what is in the country. I'm sure that a private sector in the Dominican Republic has been using BIM, as Claudia mentioned. They already are establishing the chamber of BIM. So reach out, do a market survey. What is there? What are the capabilities? And start slow. And also, of course, please join the BIM Global Network to reach out to peers within Latin America, within the common area. For example, Costa Rica, which is in Central America, it might be very similar to the Dominican Republic. It might be. So reach out to peers, establish synergies, collect lessons learned, and draw a roadmap.
Thank you. Alana?
Yes, fantastic. Thank you, speakers. We do have one additional question. So we've heard from you that, you know, it's important for colleagues around the world to join in, to learn from each other, to collaborate. So what is your particular hope for this global BIM network and its practical work areas? What outputs would you like to see?
Let's go backwards this time. Nihal, you want to go first?
Yes, thank you, Phil. Outputs, I would say a library of lessons learned. Not only the positive lessons, you know, the successful stories, but also the failure stories, as Carolina mentioned, and some examples of practical or guidelines, for example, terms of reference, for example, major risks or high risks or opportunities at different stages of the project lifecycle. Those, I think, those can be outputs or tangible products that would be useful to a lot of people.
Electra?
Yes, I think it's difficult to add something on top of what Miguel said. I expect this network to be an example of global collaboration on what it has to do, the modernization of the built environment and the construction sector. And I think a lot of things will be judged in the first months and maybe years of this network coming together and identifying the challenges and designing responses to that.
Okay, Thomas?
Thanks. I agree with the other folks, and I think also the once the pandemic is over, having in-person events, you know, where people can get together and you know work in specific countries where kind of example projects can be looked at. And I think for governments, you know, we do something often called a policy toolkit that's kind of allows governments to see what innovations in policy and regulation are being used, and you know, and basically look at that as something that could be adopted. Obviously, every government is different, but sometimes these kind of policy sharing opportunities are, you know, are also helpful, especially in something like this where the governments may not have as much knowledge of what the leading solutions are.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, Claudia, I think you're going to get the last word.
Thank you, Phil. So adding to what the other panelists said, I think one of the very specific things I'm expecting from the global network is having more sharing of evidence of what works, but a quantifiable evidence. I think that we're still trying to collect this sort of data on benefits from BIM implementation, and having this global network, I hope, is going to help with that.
Thank you. So that was a terrific session. I want to thank the panelists for their comments about how the process of implementing infrastructure can really help us coalesce around this idea of BIM and the network. And I want to thank all of our panelists from today, including all of our guests around the world, and particularly the UK Construction Innovation Hub and the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, who made this whole extravaganza possible and free across the entire globe. I think we're at a really interesting moment of convergence now. That's, you know, when you see a global change in a market like construction, it's never one thing. It's always several things coming together. In this case, ideas of technology and sustainability and the pandemic and social equity, and these are all projects that we can work on together in a kind of convergence and use the BIM platform and the global network as a way of working together on these questions and collaborating. And working together on these things is really the only way I think we're going to get any of this stuff done. So I would encourage everyone here to go onto globalbim.org, sign up for the network, start working with us on this very impactful project. And I want to thank everybody. And for the final word, I'll hand it over to Adam Matthews. Thanks, everyone. Adam?
Thanks, Phil. Thanks very much, everybody. And thank you for a really fascinating discussion there about the value. The value of the global network, as we've discussed, is to help the public sector, to help hopefully provide some cohesion and some clarity and direction as well to this globalization of the digital construction sector. Please do sign up, as Phil just said, on the website, globalbim.org. If you're the public sector, or you know that your public sector in your country would like to participate in the network, please get in touch. And if you're also from the private sector, drop us an email. As we said, sign up for updates on globalbim.org, and we'll be in touch with you during the year. Thanks so much for joining us today. We look forward to meeting you on the next session of the Global BIM Network. Thank you.